Hey, it's Garth Weber. I'm going to continue on. I've left a couple videos about Miles Davis, and I'm going to continue on and tell a few more stories about him before I return to the instructional videos. Um, Miles was an incredible character. I mean, there's nobody on the planet like that guy. He was just like in another universe or something. If he had thought nobody was watching, it wouldn't have surprised me if he'd walked through a wall or something. He's like a magician. In fact, I just thought of a good story to start out with. The very first gig that we did was in Rio, and we started what we called the opener. I don't know if the song had a name or not. We just used it to open the show, and it came time for Miles' solo, and he played what I have described as the ugly duckling of all notes. It was pathetic. The note started out like, and I thought, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into here? And when I tell this story, I always use the analogy of a potter and a potter's wheel and clay. It was as though he took a lump of clay and threw it on the wheel, and that's just where it started. And then he changed the pitch a little bit. He put some vibrato on it, and by the time he was done with this note, that it was transformative. It was alchemy. He had turned this pathetic note into this golden orb of beauty that sailed out into the hall. I could almost see it, and I thought, "Oh my God, I'm in a different world now. This is completely, outside my experience." Turn this sound off here. So that was the first inkling I had that I was in a pretty special situation. And now there were a few things that he would do on stage. He would come up and he would grab me by the shoulder, and when it was time for my solo, and he would tow me out to the front of the stage, and then he'd walk back. He'd leave me there, which I was honored by that, you know. So he would do that, and he was very very engaging on stage. One time, I think I got a standing ovation. I think this was possibly in London. I can't remember exactly where, but he walked over to me, and you know, Miles was a Golden Gloves boxer, and he was very fit. For 60, he was in real good shape, despite having not taken that great a care of himself. And so he walked over to me, and he just lightly punched me on the chin so fast that I couldn't have, if I'd known it was coming, I couldn't have dodged it. It was that fast. Just as light as a cat, just touched my chin. That was, you know, who does that? Then another time, I was in the middle of a solo, and I frequently close my eyes when I play. So I'm playing along, and all of a sudden I feel something on my foot, and I open my eyes, and Miles is right in my grill. He is literally inches from my face, and I don't know how I managed not to clam. You know, I was so shocked when I opened my eyes and saw his reptilian face there in front of me. I'd somehow managed to go ahead and play. You know, there's another thing that doesn't happen to people, right? Another little story was we were in the dressing room, and everybody left except for me and him. And so it was time to do a sound check. And so I said, Miles, I'm going to go out and do the sound check. And he was sitting at his dressing table, or you know, with the mirror and the lights and everything, and he had his shirt off, and he was very fit. You know, he was really in good shape. And so I said, I'm going to go do the sound check, and he said, I think I'm just going to stay here for a while and look at myself. I think I'm just going to stay here for a while and look at myself. What a crazy guy. And then another one. We had played a gig, and I was walking to my room in the hotel, and around the corner in front of me, here he came with a couple women on his arms, and as he walked by, he said, "You played your ass off. You played your ass off." And so I said, "Thanks, man." And then I thought, why don't I tell him he sounded good? Nobody probably ever tells him that, you know, because it's just assumed. And so a few seconds later, I said, "Hey, Miles." He turned around. I said, "You played good too." And he went, "Good." And then the last one I'll tell right now is this. I consider this a gift. The way it worked, the arrangement of the song dictated where each person would start their solo. but you would play your solo until Miles cued the end of it. You had no say over how long you would play. If I had just stopped, the band would have just kept vamping, you know, and Miles would have probably looked at me askance. But I knew that that's not the way it worked. I don't, you know, and that was fine with me because I think he was a pretty good judge of when, you know, you had exhausted what you had to say. But in this one particular instance, he had me playing for such a long time. I mean, literally, it was probably a 3 or 4 minute guitar solo, you know, I mean, long as a song. And I was running out of gas. And I looked over to see what, you know, if there was any indication that he was going to cue the end of my solo. And I could tell by his body language that he was not going to cue the end of my solo. I had to keep going. And at that moment, I said, you know, I got to find another gear. I have to dig in and I got to go back in. And I was able to do that. And that was a really valuable lesson because it taught me that I had more in the tank than I realized. That I had stuff that I could dig into, and that probably, you know, I think we don't realize it, but we have an inexhaustible supply of things we can play. And that was a very powerful lesson, and I've frequently thanked him in my mind for that. All right, more coming later.